You can no longer just circulate along the 16th Street Mall or popular areas. You have to go into each of the 35 counties and collect at least 2% of your signatures from those counties.
Senate districts.
Senate districts, right. So, so those are a couple things that we saw that were new.
But it's not, you said it's just a constitutional amendment, it's not the statutory.
That's correct. So the model changed, and so now we hybrid. If you wish to do a statutory amendment, it's the same upfront process, and it's the same back-end process, which is the 98,000 that you can collect anywhere. And then they changed the standard to add to the Constitution. It takes 55% of a vote of the people. So once it's on the ballot, it's a higher threshold to pass the measure additionally. So that may affect our ballot content, because Colorado has been one of the easiest countries in the nation to amend the Constitution, and those measures commonly do drive turnout. And recently we've seen, I think, people use it on one side or the other to drive turnout for candidates, maybe based on a ballot question that they think will be popular, and bring people to the ballot. So, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in terms of our turnout numbers. So in Colorado, we really haven't seen the voter suppression issues. Again, I think it is primarily driven by the content of the ballot. In other places, we hear a lot about photo ID and ID requirements in Colorado. If you register to vote, or if you vote in person, you do have to show some form of ID, but that ID is, there's a number of different types you can show. They don't have to be a photo ID. It can be anywhere from a utility bill to a driver's license to a student ID. So there are many types of ID that you can use in Colorado, and we really have not seen those kind of issues. But even nationwide, there's some debate about whether photo ID draws, results in voter suppression. In some states, they've actually seen the numbers go up after they've had voter ID laws. And so I think, again, that kind of points to the fact that that people vote based on ballot content. And so if you're in a place where your numbers went up, it may be that that was a more interesting election for people.
I know that homeless people in Colorado are allowed to vote. What kind of IDs do they use? Do they have a driver's license usually, or what do they have?
Well, you can use you can use just a regular ID, not a driver's license, just something that shows who you are. You can use a utility bill. You can use, any kind of recreation district ID or any kind of ID that you're given.
A birth certificate?
Oh, certainly, a birth certificate, passport. There's a number of IDs you can use in Colorado. And so, we do a lot for the homeless population. You can register to vote at a location that's a shelter and have your ballot sent to the shelter. You don't have to have a physical address in Colorado to vote. And so there are many options for people. And there's also a free ID for indigent people in Colorado. So, commonly the issue of ID is not just going to affect voting, obviously. It's also going to affect your ability to get benefits and all kinds of other things. And so, so we have not really seen those issues coming to pass in Colorado. The other issue that when we talk about suppression and driving turnout, ballot content. For instance, in California, they recently went to what they call like a top 2 primary system, and so when they voted in the primary, and now they've done it in Washington too, it's not by partisan lines. It's just all the candidates are on the ballot, and the people who receive the top 2 votes are on. So in California in this last year, both candidates for Senate were Democrats. And so the undervotes for that particular race were about 1 million. And some people opine that that's because the Republicans who turned out to vote in California didn't bother to vote in that race because there was no content on the ballot that they were interested in beyond presidential, because all the other candidates down ballot were all Democrats because of the top 2. So I think when we talk about these issues of voter suppression, it's really not just it's not just a clear-cut issue. There are a lot of different ways that people talk about it in terms of what they're allowed to vote on. I think unaffiliateds might tell you they were suppressed when they weren't allowed to vote in primaries. Republicans in California would tell you they were suppressed when they weren't allowed to vote on their candidate in the general election. So these issues are not really simple. They are a little bit more nuanced, and I think that similarly with the issue of voter fraud, and voter suppression, I think as a country we need to have, be able to have honest conversations about those rather than just using them as buzzwords to try to draw people from one side or another to the ballot. And so I think it's good that we have conversations about voter suppression and have conversations about voter fraud, because when we can have a dialogue about it without people making accusations that you're trying to do this or you're trying to do that, or people trying to use it to draw out one group or another, that becomes a dangerous thing, because a lot of what we rely on with elections is people having faith in them. And if we don't have faith in our democracy and faith in the people that we elect, then we aren't truly a democracy. And so, I'm encouraged by discussions like this where, we can have open dialogues and have them in a place where, those kinds of accusations aren't being made. Because I think that the issue of voter suppression, certainly in some states, is probably greater than the concerns that we've seen in Colorado. I know they are from visits we've had with other secretaries of state, and I think we're lucky to be in a state where we can have an honest dialogue and have a voting model where we have so many opportunities for people.
So when this president claims that there is rampant voter fraud and that more than 3 million people who were not eligible voted in the 2016 presidential election, can we rely on this Secretary of State to say that at least as far as Colorado is concerned, that's not true?
You already did that.
Yeah, the Secretary went on record saying that certainly in Colorado we have not seen that level of fraud would extrapolate out, or our percentage of population adding to that. We do have issues in Colorado. We have seen, we have some fraud in the signature process when ballots are buttoned. That a number of ballots end up not being secured, and then there are DA investigations about people voting. We know that Colorado was the target for voting in the last election, and I think that this secretary and a lot of people would agree that trading your vote for somebody in another state who's not eligible to vote here in Colorado is fraudulent. And so it depends on how you define just that term. Did we have 100,000 people that were ineligible in Colorado's election show the polls and vote? I don't think so. Did we have full attempt to? Maybe through mail? I've got a higher number of attempt to through the mail and actually through, because we verify signatures as it comes in. How many of the ballots actually got cast in Colorado? I think we have a lot of controls on our system to make sure that doesn't happen. So the fraud in Colorado, while still serious every time we have one or we have two, I'm not downplaying it, but certainly not going to be that kind of number in Colorado.
One of the issues that was raised after the last election was the issue of people who had died remaining on the rolls and somebody voting in their name. I remember many years ago when I was voting in California, if you missed either one or two, I forget whether it's one or two, general elections, you were removed from the voter rolls. And you had to re-register, of course, you were still alive. Does Colorado have any kind of a automatic deletion of registered voters for non-participation or something like that?
We do not, and we used to before House Bill 1303 in 2013, the one that brought in the mail ballots. They reset the inactive failed to vote category, which we used to have. And in Colorado, if you failed to vote in 2 major elections, that started the clock to remove you. Well, if you failed to vote in 1 major election, it started the clock to remove you, and then if you missed another major election after that, you were removed. So that went away with House Bill 1303, and House Bill 1303, I mean, we've implemented it. It had a lot of details to it. It was the one that had the all-mail ballot and the same-day registration and some other things. And that bill was a very partisan bill and caused a lot of hard feelings at the, parties at the legislature, and I think we have done a really good job implementing it. But that was certainly one of the things that we were concerned about, was that we now had no mechanism to remove people from the voter rolls unless they voluntarily withdrew or we got some kind of notice. So we likely will catch that, because we run on a monthly basis, and then closer, more than every month as we get closer to the election, we run the death records in Colorado. The problem has been that we, for a time, and really up until a couple years ago, we were only running it in Colorado. We only had access to Colorado records. So if you were a Colorado resident registered to vote here, but you passed away somewhere else, we never got notice of that. We now participate in a project called ERIC, which is part of Pew Research. And ERIC provides us lists of voters in other states. And so we cross-check those lists. And if you register to vote in another state, now you'll get a notice from us in Colorado saying it looks like you registered to vote somewhere else, and we're going to remove you from our rolls if we don't hear from you in 2 elections. If we get a notice that you're deceased, we remove you from the rolls. If we get a notice from the from the federal felon list that you've been convicted of a felony, you'll be removed from the rolls. But otherwise, it's only if we get a notice from the post office saying that you've moved, then you'll get a postcard forwarded to you at your new address. If it was an in-state move, we'll automatically update that for you. If it was an out-of-state move, then we'll make an attempt to contact you via postcard and then remove you after 2 elections. But we have to get something from somebody indicating you're not here, or you have to proactively withdraw. And sometimes that doesn't happen. People don't file a change of address. They just, especially these days, I mean, kids don't even get mail, they do everything on their phones. And so, sometimes we don't get that notice until maybe the new occupant indicates that, this person no longer lives here or something.
Colorado is one of 30 states that belong to what's called cross-check. I guess it used to be called ERIC, or maybe it still is. But anyway, investigative reporter Greg Pallas has revealed that at least 2 million people have been removed from the rolls without careful checking of the names don't compare perfectly. And so I wondered if you could talk about cross-checks activity in Colorado, or how that works.
Well, in Colorado, in order to remove a duplicate voter registration, we need minimum matching criteria, which is really pretty strong. We need a name match and an address, or birthday. We need 2 different kinds of things in order to remove somebody's name. We don't base anything just on name. And in fact, sometimes you might have, twins are born on the same day, and those aren't considered duplicate
I
registrations.
understand that originally in Colorado it was supposed to include the social security number too, at least the last 4 digits. And this wasn't done in a lot of states where voters were taken off the rolls, and they supposedly had names that seemed to be Hispanic or maybe black. And but I just wonder how the whole thing works in Colorado. Do you send a list somewhere and they do it, and then it comes back to Colorado, or what?
Yeah, we send our voter registration list to ERIC, as do all the other states that participate.
But ERIC, where is that?
ERIC is part of Pew Research, and so we're essentially sending it to Pew Research Foundation, and they go through the records, and then they send us back people that they think are duplicates. Now in Colorado, you're not going to be automatically removed, even if we think you're a duplicate somewhere else. You're going to get a postcard that will be forwarded to your new address, or at the new address where we find out registered, asking you, if you have changed your voter registration, please withdraw in Colorado. Now you're still going to have those 2 elections that I talked about, where even if we put you on an inactive list, if you don't vote in 2 elections and you're an inactive voter, then you'll be removed. But you would have to not vote in 2 major elections, so not just a 15 and a 16, but a presidential and a gubernatorial.
So how many of those names did you get back from
We're still going through the numbers. This is really one of the first rounds in this presidential that we've gotten the information back from them. We have about 600,000 people on the inactive registration, and so those people drop off. Many of them will drop off after this election because they've already been on for the 2 major elections.
But I meant that have the same name as somebody in another state.
The same name?
The same person supposedly is registered in 2 states.
I'm not sure what those numbers are. We also got numbers back this year from them on people they believe voted in 2 different states, and so that number is going to be a lot smaller, but I'm not sure how many numbers they sent back. I'd have to get that and tell you, but in Colorado, we don't just remove people from the voter roll.
Okay, that's great.
What do you do about signatures? I live at Fraser, and through the years when I, help them put it in the envelope and they have to sign, they're very worried because they can't sign the way they used to. How would you check the names?
The names are checked, so in a case like that where somebody is that concerned about it, you can also witness for them. And so they just make a mark and then you sign as their witness, and then we don't check their signature. So there is a way to, to do that if the voter needs assistance and can't do a signature.
But what if we don't do that? And
Yeah.
how do you, when you see a signature that's illegible or whatever, what do you do about that?
So we check all the signatures against the last signature that we have. And so that will either be what you signed DMV or it'll be what you signed on your last ballot. So each time that you submit a new signature, we update that signature. So it's each time you have contact with that signature. And so then your signature in a bigger county, it'll show up. They'll put the signatures side by side. The signature on the envelope will show up on a screen next to the signature that was submitted, and then they will check those two against each other. The judges are all trained in doing signature verification, and that's done a little differently in different counties. Bigger counties generally will bring in someone from the sheriff's department to talk about the things you look for, or someone from a bank or something like that. We also have an online training that we offer at the Secretary's office that anybody can go in and watch, and then sort of take a mini test at the end about which ones match up and which don't. And so they're trained in looking for those. And first pass through, if the judges agree that the signatures match, then they send it to be separated and to be processed. If the judges believe the signatures don't match, it's escalated to another team of judges who then go back and look at old signatures in our voter registration database. So it may be that the one time you signed that we have uploaded in the system, your arm was broken or something, and so they'll go back and they'll look at, well, let's see how they signed 4 years ago or 3 years ago and see how that signature's evolved. And so they'll try to match it up. If they can't, and they believe that that signature doesn't match, then they'll send a letter to the person, asking them, informing them that their ballot was not processed because of the signature discrepancy, and that they have up to 8 days after the election to cure it. And so that means they can do that by simply taking a picture of their driver's license or some other kind of ID and faxing it into the clerk's office or emailing it, or they can. I mean, that's what all parties were to chase this. Some of the chase lists beforehand are voters who have voted, and then after it's the cure list, they're all out looking for people to do it.
So I am pretty concerned about the way that different counties do signature verification differently, and the data that you have is awful in some cases. I mean, it's people using fingers to do signatures, as so many of us have done, which look nothing like something on record. When you have somebody that is a witness, as I understand it, you don't even look at either the witness's signature or the person's signature, so that's kind of a free pass. Do you foresee any way to do auditing of signature verification after the election, or some other method that, I don't know what I would do in your position. It's an awful place to be. It's kind of irrelevant to talk about photo ID in Colorado because hardly anybody goes to the polling place to write that. And nobody wants to prevent legitimate people from voting, but people that have watched a lot just have a hard time believing that a quality job can be done.
Yeah,
Where do we go with it?
Well, about 95% of our voters now are voting by mail. And so and every single one of those, well, I'll back up a little bit. In some of the bigger counties, they do have, these sorter machines that will sort and check signatures. Now, our requirements set those standards so high on the machine that a lot of times only like 30 or 40% of the signatures will pass through on the machine. And that's because we need to make sure we catch the ones that don't. And so Most of the signatures are still going to have to be looked at individually by judges. And you're right. I don't know how many of you have ever been election judges? Anyone ever done signature verification? I mean, it's very fatiguing, to sit there for an 8 or 12-hour shift and just watch signature, just popping up. And, I mean, that's got to be one of the most. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we also are from Broomfield, and we also go to nursing homes. We send teams to nursing homes in the general election. I think we had, there were probably 16 or 18 of us, Republican and Democratic judges, and went to nursing homes, and we were the ones that verified the signatures of the patients.
Right.
They were introduced to us from the staff. This is so-and-so.
Right.
And then we would give them the ballot and help them with that. And sometimes it would take up to an hour with one individual. And sometimes they just scribbled something.
Right.
We would then witness that.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that
they're
got
almost.
turned in, and that was not questioned at all,
Right.
because we were the witnesses, we
Well,
were the appointed judges.
Right, and it's almost in-person voting at that
Yes,
point.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So it seems to me that there should be software out there for signature recognition, just like there is for facial recognition and such. Is that out there, and has the state considered that?
It is, and it's not the state. Each county runs their elections individually, and so whether or not they can afford certain things, it's really county by county. And so our smaller counties are not using any kind of software. They don't have enough ballots coming in to justify the cost of that kind of software. But there is software that will recognize a signature, but it's not going to be like a face or a fingerprint. It's going to change a lot. And so, depending on, at DMV, you're very careful. And I mean, DMV, they don't do a finger signature because we import it into our voter registration. We don't need a grocery store signature. But at DMV, you're probably going to be more careful and spell out all the letters in your name. And then when you sign your ballot or when you sign a check or anything else, you are probably pretty good about your first and last initial, and then everything else looks like a scribble, right? So it just sort of, that's what my signature looks like. It doesn't really look a lot like the DMV one, but my signature gets through every time because my first and last letters are always going to look alike. And so it just depends on what you're trying to find, and that's what I mean by it depends how you set the system. It's going to let 80% through if you set it with certain parameters, and it's going to let 40% through. Now, we do have an audit requirement for that. So if you're using a machine to do your signature verification, then you periodically have to audit that by having judges do the same comparison. And we have found a couple that have gotten through. So even at the setting that we have signatures that were rejected by judges that were accepted by the machine when we conduct the audit. And in Colorado, since we don't vote in person, we don't have photo ID. It's really the only place where you catch, something coming in that it could be fraudulent, and so that becomes a real contention point. Certainly, people who do signature verification, the watchers, those kinds of people. That's an area they're really paying attention to.
So if the signature doesn't seem right, then is the voter notified?
Yes, they are sent a letter to the address where they received the ballot, informing them that their signature has a discrepancy and that they have to produce some sort of, they have to come curate. So they can either do that in person in the clerk's office, or they can take a picture and email it, or they can fax it or whatever, their ID, and then that vote is processed and counted. A number of them, the statute requires that the ones that are not, and I don't know what the number was in this election, but in the gubernatorial, the last election, there were 8,000 ballots that were never cured. The statute requires that those are all referred to the DA's offices to investigate whether or not those were fraudulent. And then there's another few hundred where there's no signature at all. They receive the same kind of letter that they have to cure it because there's nothing on the ballot.
So is that 8,000 out of how many would you happen to know?
3 million.
It was about 2 million that voted in that
so that's
election.
a small percentage.
How many DAs are there?
Where are there 22 districts?
Sounds good.
Yeah. So they all go to those district offices. The clerks are required to forward those names on to the district attorneys.
So this is called voter suppression. And one of the things I think is true about Colorado is that after you've served your time as a felon, then you can register to vote again. Isn't that correct?
Yes, yes.
Which isn't true in every state.
No, it's different state by state. Some states don't have a disqualification for felons. Some have a once you're off parole, which is what Colorado is, and some you can vote again. So that's a state by state, which is one of the few that in a federal election they would allow the state to determine eligibility based on, you know.
For voting for president.
Right, yeah, because it's a federal election. But yeah, that's one of the areas where states can legislate individually.
Could you speak some more about the national effects of voter suppression in the wake of I believe, the Supreme Court decision on the Voting Rights Act? Because there were cases that came up where, polling places were reduced, but specifically in areas where there were a large number of minority voters, et cetera. That kind of thing I'm interested in hearing, because I know there's places that have a lot more trouble than we do with this, and what can be done to correct that nationally, legally.
So that's the Shelby County case that talked about that's the Voting Rights Act. Colorado has never been one of the states under the, I guess some people call it the watch list from Department of Justice. And so when we make changes in our laws, we don't have to get pre-clearance from Justice. And the other law that works a little bit like that is the National Voter Registration Act. All the activities under the National Voter Registration Act regulate states that at the time the act was passed did not have same-day voter registration. And so that act, which back to the issue of list maintenance, I guess, is the one that specifies when you can remove somebody from the voter rolls. And Colorado, we're still under that act, even though we have same-day registration now, because we didn't have it back when it was passed. But there are a number of, in terms of the Voting Rights Act, I mean, the primary thing that was challenged there was the DOJ clearance, and now that pre-clearance standard has gone away from many of those states. So, I can't really speak to the effect of that because we were never a pre-clearance state in Colorado. We never were subject. We do work with DOJ, a lot, and certainly they'll contact us, prior to elections to talk about our processes and issues that we might see in terms of suppression and what to do if we get complaints about it and that sort of thing. But we didn't, the 5 years I've been there, I don't think I've received any complaints, I'm pretty sure I haven't, about, somebody feeling like they got to the polls and they were intimidated, felt like they couldn't enter. We've had some complaints about videotaping that's taking place outside a polling place, and I know that was a clerk-initiated complaint, and it came out, or the investigator told them to, that people were feeling uncomfortable coming in because there was a videotape running outside. That's about the only one I can think of. But certainly, we just don't have a lot of interaction with voters, and you're not really interacting with your mailbox or your Dropbox, and so we just don't have that level in Colorado of people, I think, feeling like they are, in any way being suppressed.
So in those states that used to be under the jurisdiction of the Voting Rights Act, now it's basically they can do whatever they want to, and somebody can object later on, but it's not going to have the scrutiny, on the front end. And
well, you could still object on the front end. You could still file a personal lawsuit or have a group file on your behalf.
Any corrections that need to take place with whatever is done in those states is going to have to be done at the state level there. It's not going to have any
right. They're not going to have
support from the federal government.
They're not going to have to pre-clear their, their changes in laws with the Department of Justice. They'll be back to a model where certainly any individual can sue under Help America Vote Act or National Voter Registration Act or Voting Rights Act, but there won't be a monitor at the DOJ.
The leagues in Florida and North Carolina have been very vigilant. Those two states I know definitely on trying to come back because they were under DOJ rulings, and so the leagues have won some cases in those states since that Shelby case decision.
Yeah, I think we see things from the league or from the ACLU or NAACP. So groups like that have still filed suit under those. I know there's one in Akron.
Yes, as the Secretary of State's office, are you allowed to testify at the legislature about proposed impacts of, let's say, stricter signature requirements or stricter, reduced voting center hours, that type of thing?
Yes, we testify at the legislature commonly, probably on every elections bill. So I think we're almost expected to be there. So yeah, we have a presence over there, and we actually have our own legislative agenda every year that when we go we go through the summer, we come up with things that we would like to clean up. This year we have a vacancy cleanup statute to address issues with vacancies that come up, prior to election. So we've seen a number of issues with like school board races around Colorado where there have been people on the ballot who aren't eligible to serve. We had 2 of those in the last couple of years, and so this vacancy cleanup seeks to fix some of the timeline in vacancy, that sort of thing. We have a campaign finance cleanup bill. We have one does signature verification on petition. Actually, just went through the House, and so because we saw a lot of activity about fraud on signature.
Senate Bill 71, something like that. Is that what I was going to ask about?
Which one is that?
I think the number 71, Senate Bill 71, maybe. You
What's
said
the
House.
content?
I was going to ask you.
Okay. Got a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
A lot of numbers in my brain. And so we have taken part in that. We do some other things that, like we ran an open records working group over the summer because Cora affects our office, it does every other government agency, and so we have pretty active presence in the legislature and in the policy making of elections.
I come from Wisconsin where I was a clerk, and we have voter ID there. And the communities who I worked with were big believers in voter ID. As a clerk, I was not such a big believer in voter ID. And I was talking with my brother-in-law about getting a voter ID because it was go to the DMV and you'll get issued a voter ID whether you have a license or not. And it turns out that was one of the pinch points. So where I grew up, I would have to go to a DMV in a different city, half an hour or more away, that were open 4 hours a month. So my question is, so you can see kind of the implementation. Those of us who drive just doesn't seem like a big deal, but those of us who don't drive or don't have that kind of ID, it is an issue. So here in Colorado, to register, you have to have some sort of proof of where you come from. The question about what do you do for the homeless and what do they use for ID, to me this just goes ding, 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 because it's actually a very difficult administrative issue, and especially when you have something like students who are turning over, or when you're mailing to houses and people move, especially those among the community that move frequently. Are you finding that here the signature verification kind of saves you, or is it really administration of those address changes that are kind of your pinch point? Because if you don't have a house, way long ago when I was a clerk in a different community, you could actually have someone vouch for you if you didn't have anything to prove. They would say, oh, I know him. He's here, I know where he lives, and then you could take that signature to register that person. And homeless people would say, I live under the bridge, and this is what so what do you do, because yours is a mail-based system, what's your pinch point, and where do we need to watch for the difficulties of getting a ballot if you live here?
Well, we're certainly in a very mobile population too. So beyond just the homeless, a lot of people are moving around a lot. Now, if we get notification from the post office about a move within the state, we're automatically just going to update your voter reg. Hopefully we get to the point at some time that when you change your address at DMV, it automatically changes your voter reg and maybe reverse, because there's no reason that those should ever be different. But
if anybody goes to the voter registration to change their address.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Right, so, if we get a notice, from the post office, or DMV, we'll go ahead and we will, make that update within the state. But if you move outside the state, or if you come to the state from somewhere else and you didn't register to vote. But, in Colorado, there are so many, and when we talk about all mail ballot states, a lot of states, yes, every ballot is on the mail. And if you didn't get a mail ballot, you have to go to the clerk's office and get your mail ballot, and then submit it. But in Colorado, we're really a hybrid model, because we have early voting at a voter polling and service center, and then we have, there's a formula for it. And so in the early voting, you have to have as many open as you have DMVs in your county. And then after that, on election day, you'll see a whole lot of, and the day before, you'll see a lot more VSPCs pop up. And you can show up at those VSPCs and register same day, or change your registration and update
So your
it.
fallback is really having that
Right.
that polling place available.
Yeah.
So the pinch point will be how many polling places and how accessible.
Right. I mean, the only reason that we really even need voter registration in Colorado anymore is because we want to mail you a ballot. I mean, other than that, you can just show up that day and vote, right? So, some smaller states like Wyoming and maybe Montana, there is no voter registration because everybody just shows up at the polls. And the only time you would ever register is if you were military or you wanted an absentee
Overseas.
ballot, right? So, so it's a little bit different in Colorado. That's really our fail-safe, I guess.
I just wanted to clarify, are you saying that by submitting a change of address notification to the post office, that your voter records are also updated by that, or isn't that a separate?
No, if the voter takes an action, so if you change your address at the post office permanently, if you just do a vacation one, we won't. If you permanently change your address at the post office, we will automatically update your address in the voter registration database.
Oh, and that's simply, that's within the state of Colorado, not.
Right,
Not
we
outside.
can't do it out of state, but if
Okay.
you move within state, it used to just be within county,
Yeah.
and then last year, the legislature made a change, that we supported along with some other maintenance changes that allowed us to do it within, because in the metro area, the county lines are pretty blurred.
Is that because you send the postcard and then you get the return from the post office, or do
We
they
do send
it?
a postcard telling them, we're changing your address, but we go ahead and do it anyway.
Okay. So the post office lets you know.
Yeah, we get a list,
Okay.
and it's a national change of address list.
Okay.
So we use that NCOA list to do that.
You get a,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I moved here not too long ago. When I went to get my Colorado driver's license, they asked me if I wanted to register. So they registered me. Now, if that hadn't been true, do you guys do what Oregon does? Do you automatically register people when they get a driver's license?
We do not. We actually at our office, Secretary's office, we don't believe that model has worked very well in Oregon. At DMV now, and I'm going back to license, they recently upgraded their system. It used to be when you went to DMV and they registered about, you said, yes, and you have a piece of paper, and then a lot of people said, never mind. And so now that they have the new system.
So. I think they just did.
Yeah, okay, so you must have done it recently, because I took my daughter recently and they were fully integrated. But now they just say, do you want to register to vote? And we will use all this information to register you.
Yeah.
It's actually been wonderful, because in the past, because we had voter registrations coming in handwriting, we were getting duplicate registrations because people were inputting it incorrectly, or we couldn't read your writing, or whatever the issue is. Now it's automatically integrated in DMV. If you don't register in DMV, or you don't have a driver's license, we have an online voter registration system, and so you can just go to govotecolorado.com. Yeah.
If you think that's wonderful, then why isn't the Oregon model wonderful?
The Oregon model registers you whether you want to or not, and then everybody is registered as an unaffiliated. They don't ask you whether you want to affiliate. They just register you unaffiliated, and then they send you a postcard, and they say, if you don't want to be registered, or if you want to affiliate, then send back this postcard. And so nobody affiliate. It's just, and people who didn't want to be registered are now registered, but they're not. Some people don't want to be registered. It's a public document. They don't want, you know,
Is
they,
that a high percentage of people?
well, who knows why the 13% in Colorado who aren't registered have chosen not to be. I mean, we even go so far as if you didn't register at DMV, but we know you exist and you're an eligible elector, we send you a postcard before the election and we say, we notice you're living here and you're not registered, would you like to register? You know, and so, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but if you don't want to be registered, you just don't want to be bothered, whatever, you know, that's your choice.
I know, excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't, but we have 5 more minutes, and I just want to say, anybody have any questions, you're thinking about anything, please ask, because we do, at 6:30, we do have to start wrapping up and everything, okay? So start thinking about like fettuccine Alfredo and but I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to let you know because you do have questions to go ahead and start thinking about it right now so you can ask her before she's so wonderful before she leaves.
I
Okay?
think mine was a quick yes or no, but is jury duty based on voter registration? Could that be a reason people don't want to register, or is it based on some other?
They get lists from voter registration and DMV, but yes.
When someone is deceased, you get from the funeral parlor or Social Security, list the names so that you don't send out ballots?
Yes, we do now. We used to only get lists within Colorado from Department of Health, but now we get lists nationwide. We get them from Social Security and from other states.
When you have to take down proof of death when you go down to the, I had to do that, they told me. Is that also, so is that automatically, you have to do that anymore?
You don't have to know.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm relatively new to Colorado. Now, do you just deal with voter registration, or do you deal with introducing new candidates to the population? Because when I came in, I didn't know anything about the candidates, only from the ads that they had on their. So I was wondering, do you do anything?
Well, this is
about
the League of Women Voters is what you're asking. Because she doesn't.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you just deal with registration.
Yeah, we don't do any like links to candidates. We will put out ballot content ahead of time, so you can go do your own research. We'll put out a sample ballot online.
So the league does something in addition to what you have.
We don't, but yeah.
When you're 16, you can register to vote now.
Yeah, that's a new thing in Colorado in the last few years. You can now.
You pre-register.
Do the
Get
DMV.
your driver's license and pre-register.
That's right.
But you have to be 18 to actually do
Right.
it.
Yes.
Vote, yes.
Or to go.
Both my kids are
Both my kids all over it, but my daughter was really mad because her birthday fell between the caucuses national, so she couldn't participate in the caucuses, but she pointed out to me all the states where she could have been. And Colorado is, if you have an opinion on whether or not that makes sense to let someone who will be 18 by the general election participate in whatever the primary process is.
You know, I don't think we've ever had an opinion on it. It's really a party-driven because the parties are private organizations, and if they want to have people participate and take legislation to allow that, I'm not sure that we would necessarily have a position because it's really the parties choosing how they're going to run their nomination process. So.
But we are gonna have primaries in the future, right?
Yeah.
That's
Presidential
That's a done
primaries.
deal?
Yeah, presidential. Now, there is an opt-out in the open primary because they're private parties and they have an opportunity to determine their own nomination process. If they choose not to use the open primary method, they can opt out of that and do it all by assembly. So you could see a time where there was only a Democratic primary and not a Republican, depending on whether one party or the other wanted to opt out. But we will have a presidential next time.
And they decide that like December, October. Before the even year.
Yeah, because the other consequence, of course, is that no one will be able to petition on the ballot because there'll be no ballot. Yeah, so we'll see those changes.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's more of a involvement by the Secretary of State's office instead of the county clerks, purging records and all that kind of thing. Is that true, or is that just perception?
Yeah, that must be a perception because we're not the registrar. So we run the voter registration database, but any changes in the systems are made by the counties. Adding you to the database is made by the county, and taking voters off the database, those changes are made by the counties. We send them the information, but we don't actually actually do anything.
So you mentioned this, I mean, we know each county kind of does their own, some counties only can afford things, and with all the talk about potential voter fraud, or not voter fraud, the potential of hacking and all those kinds of issues, is there a possibility that the state would come up with some software that's available for each of the counties to do, so you don't have that expense and
Well,
issue?
we don't pick what they buy, but we do have standards for voting systems. So no voting system in Colorado is allowed to be connected to the internet. And so it's a closed system. And so any tabulation system is going to be run on a closed circuit and cannot be hacked because there's nowhere to hack it from. Now, there could be issues with the statewide voter registration because that is on an internet system and the counties are connecting to that. But, you know, the fail-safe for Colorado is we have state voter registration. You would have presumably already got your ballot in the mail. And then, you know, if something were to happen, we would just vote everybody, either register them same day or give them provisional ballots. It would be a much smaller number than in other states because most of our ballots are cast by mail. But we do have controls for that, and we have a series of security rules about voting systems.
Last question.
How many states have that requirement where they can't be hacked?
Well, it depends on how the state's tabulating, and so most states aren't going to have their tabulation systems hooked up to the internet, but they may have like key cards and things like that that can be put into a voting system that is going to go into tabulation. So we don't have that, but some of the older systems, it's run on a sort of a card type system. There's problems with it. I don't know how. You could probably explain it better in layman's terms. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, you can't say something can't be hacked. I mean, trust me, there are ways, it's obviously, there are ways to protect it better, but.
You'd have to be in the room, though, with the
Well,
system.
the vendor can do it, the people you farm it out to can do it, an insider can do it.
Yeah.
People can do it indirectly through USB. There's all kinds of
But you have to be in the
approaches,
room.
which is why I'm so glad that we're actually going to
You can't be in Russia.
a much better. Well, no, you could be, I mean, we hacked Iran, and we weren't there, but I'm glad we're doing an audit of the paper ballots, so that helps tremendously.
Thank you all so much. Yeah.